Welcome to The Smart Divorce on Divorce Source Radio, helping you move forward with focus, hope, and confidence, saving you time, money, and your sanity as you build a better life post-divorce. I'm Steve Peck. Deborah Moskovitch, divorce consultant, educator, and author of The Smart Divorce, brings you the leading experts and researchers in the divorce arena. We'll also speak with those in the trenches, people who've learned from their divorce and how their experience has changed their lives. And they would tell you for the better. Divorce can be a beginning, even if it looks like an end, and rich in opportunity to learn and grow from. And on the Smart Divorce Radio Show, we'll explore how to create a positive outlook post-divorce life. And now, here's Deborah.
Hi, Steve. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Deborah?
Fabulous. Because we've got another thought-provoking and fabulous show today. We're exploring access to justice. Mm-hmm. Now, you're probably wondering what that means. You know, people often think it's going to court, but the truth is you want to avoid that. It can be devastating. I know, because I was there. Mm-hmm. And you get it.
I get it.
I want to share a quote that I heard a while back at a conference. Divorce is a problem to be solved, not a war to be won. I love that. I use that a lot. Because we know that divorce can become a toxic battle for both sides should you land in court. So, what does that mean? And what can people do? Well, I'm thrilled and honored to have as our guest today, Justice Rebecca Love Kourlis, the Executive Director of IAALS. IAALS is the Institute for the Advancement of the American Legal System. It's a national independent research center at the University of Denver dedicated to continuous improvement of the process and culture of the American legal system. Justice Kourlis, Becky, served Colorado's judiciary for nearly 2 decades. She's the author of more than 200 opinions and dissents during her tenure as a judge, and also spearheaded significant reforms in the judicial system related to juries, family law, and attorney regulation. Her contribution to the justice system is significant and impressive. She's also received numerous individual honors and awards. Becky is definitely making a difference for families in divorce. Please join me in welcoming Becky Kourlis.
Hello, Becky. How are you?
Hi, Steve. I am well, thank you.
Well, let's start out. We talked about access to justice. What does that mean for family court litigants?
So, Deborah, as you've already alluded to, it means a whole host of different things for family court litigants. At the first level, it means access to a timely, affordable, and efficient resolution of their issues. But family litigants are a little different from civil litigants or criminal litigants. They need more than just access to the court process itself. They often need access to alternative services, such things as educational services. Some litigants may require protective services. Some of them need access to therapeutic services, other kinds of dispute resolution and education about how the whole process works, as well as the application of the law itself to their particular circumstances. So access is a pretty complicated thing when you're talking about family court litigants. And then, of course, there's the overlay that many family court litigants do not have attorneys. Yes. They are going this solo, and that can be a problem as well.
It's never a good thing, is it?
Well, I don't know, Steve. I think it sort of is the way of the world at this particular point in time, and the court system needs to adapt to that rather than trying to figure out a way to assure that every litigant does have legal services, which would be ideal, but not even close to possible in this world. I think we need to figure out a way to make sure that people can navigate these waters by themselves without damaging their particular legal rights or their family.
I mean, Deborah, that's not your preferred method. You try to advise clients away from that, don't you?
Oh, I always suggest that they stay out of court if it's at all possible. Now, there are times when you have to go to court. If one family one parent wants to move out of the country, with the child, then what do? Or if you're not getting full financial disclosure, you do need to go to court. But in every other instance, and Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, but really, in every other instance, we should be staying out of court.
I agree, Deborah. I think that these issues are not appropriate for the adversarial system that is a function of the way the courts work. I mean, that's just the nature of the game. And when you insert a family into that process, it's almost always damaging.
Right. The court system was designed for criminals.
Yeah.
Divorce is not a criminal matter.
Although sometimes it feels like it is. You know what I'm saying?
It can have domestic violence attributes that are certainly criminal and need to be addressed as criminal matters. But the divorce itself is not criminal.
Right. So, the work that you're doing with IAALS, it's really impressive. How would you guide our listeners to managing divorce in a better way?
So, I think, Deborah, as do you, that a divorce litigant has the responsibility for managing the process for him or herself and becoming as educated as possible about the legal ramifications as well as the psychological impact on children, the long-term parenting impacts, and then figuring out a process that is best geared to helping that particular family arrive at an agreement without the need for adversarial intervention, if at all possible. So I guess, like with anything else in today's world, job one, in my view, for divorce litigants is to become educated, figure out what this system looks like, understand their own legal rights, understand some of the psychological realities of, for example, developmental stages with respect to children, understand the financial aspect, their own finances, as well as how the law will apply to those finances. The better educated people are as they come into this process, the more likely it is that they will be able to design a way through it that is less damaging for them.
Right. So, through IAALS, I know that you're doing so much work. For our listeners that have the benefit of being in Denver, or for those that don't but want to learn from what you're doing, how does your process work differently, or what reforms are you trying to establish?
So IAALS itself, Deborah, is a research entity that collects empirical data, research across a host of disciplines, works with some incredibly smart and knowledgeable people to come up with proposed models or solutions. We then find places to pilot test these models, and we evaluate the pilot projects. We've done this across a host of different areas of work. When it comes to the Honoring Families Initiative, which is what we're talking about right now, we have one pilot project that we designed that's in place that I'll tell you about, and then a few other projects that we're monitoring that we didn't design. The one that we designed is an out-of-court model for separating and divorcing families. It's on campus here at the University of Denver, and we use supervised graduate students to provide the services to the family. The services can include education about the process, so education about the law, counseling for the parents and the kids, information about parenting after divorce, financial information. We have social worker grad students who are sort of the case managers for these families and who help them design a plan. And then we have mediation at the center that is done in teams of a law student and either a psych student or a social work student. The ultimate objective being to help these families arrive at an agreement. If they're able to do that, we have the services of a senior judge from the Denver District Court who comes to the center and enters the agreement into the record, so the family never even has to go to court. So that's our out-of-court model that is up and operating, Deborah.
That is really phenomenal.
Is there a cost to that?
It's a sliding fee scale, Steve, but it's very reasonable. And only the actual hours of counseling or mediation are billed. All of the sort of prefatory work and the general sessions are not billed.
What a holistic way to go through divorce.
Sounds
because when you talk about, Steve, you asked about the cost. People often think that it doesn't cost anything to go to court because the court system is free. You're not paying for the judge. But when you think about paying for your lawyer's time to sit outside while you're waiting to see a judge, right? Becky, you could be charged 3 or 4 hours of your lawyer's time just waiting to go in to see a judge. So what you're doing is actually a great way to reform the court system, the access to justice.
So you don't have to have your own attorney when you're doing this?
No.
That's so cool.
It is cool. It's very cool. We've got to figure out how to run it in a financially sustainable way, the kinds of partnerships that we need to put together. But we're hoping that this model can be scaled and shared across the country. And we're collecting really robust evaluation data so that we can ultimately do that. We're in the first year of the project now.
Is this a nonprofit?
Yeah, it's part of the university.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So when I look at what IAALS is doing in the area to increase access to family cases, access to justice in family cases, your out-of-court model for separating and divorcing families is phenomenal. Do families need to do the education part on their own, or do you guide them through in terms of what information they need to better understand from the therapeutic side, the parenting side? Do you give them those resources?
Yes. Yeah. The education is provided on site and also links to information that would supplement what's available on site is provided to them. So it's a really rich resource for them where they can kind of pick and choose what their family needs.
That's phenomenal because I think that individuals' brand of justice is so different than what the court brand of justice is or what the outcome of the justice is because of no-fault divorce. So even though someone might not want the divorce or there was infidelity, abuse, whatever it was, you think that you should pay for the other side should pay for the injustice, but that's not the way it works.
I've heard you talk about that before, Deborah, and I absolutely agree that if you're trying to wreak some sort of revenge or your own brand of justice through the court system by litigating a divorce case, you're way off the mark.
Yeah.
You're not going to feel good about it. In the end analysis, it's going to cause more damage than any wounds that it may heal.
So that's what I love about the education then that you provide, because you know up front what's possible and what objectives are totally unrealistic. What about the post-degree processes? Like once the file is closed, litigants still like to, people still like to return to court every now and then.
So that segues us into what IAALS is working on now, which is to accept as a given that we're going to end up with a lot of families in the existing court system. What can be done better within that system, or ultimately how can that system be reformed? So on the first point, what can be done better within the system as it currently exists? We have projects underway now looking at such things as what kind of education should judges who are handling these cases receive? It should not just be divorce law. It needs to be a broader, deeper swath of what the problems are that family is facing when they come before the judge. Some of the psychological issues, as I said earlier, developmental stages for children, some of the signs of domestic abuse, those kinds of things that judges need to be aware of in order to handle the cases well. That's an example of a project we're working on. We are also looking, as you suggest, at the question of who is it who returns to the court in a post-decree setting to re-litigate issues, and why are they there? Are they there because the court didn't do a very good job of resolving those issues in the first instance? Are they just sort of inured to the litigation process and somehow they've convinced themselves that they need the court in order to help them resolve their issues? Have they been sort of disempowered through the process? Why are they coming back to court? Because those post-decree cases are often a huge source of cost, delay, ongoing dissatisfaction with the court system, and ongoing damage to the children of the family. So we're trying to sort out what the profile of a post-decree litigant is and how the system could be better designed to help those people. We're also looking at the front end. Are there ways to triage these cases when they come into the court so that you can identify the ones that need certain kinds of services, the ones where the parties are in complete agreement and the case ought just to be streamlined through, or the ones where there are some fairly narrow issues with which they need court assistance, but they don't need full-blown court process. So there are a whole series of stages at which we're trying to figure out what we know about the way that the process is currently operating and what we might suggest as a better way to help these people through the system so that we avoid some of these really insidious problems that we've all been talking about.
Right. And I know that triage model is something that's looked at countrywide, actually across North America. And what you've been talking about really alludes to the fact that it's something that I talk about a lot, are the two sides to divorce. You're experiencing two divorces, the emotional divorce and the legal divorce. So what I love about the work that you're doing is it's that educational piece, helping people navigate the waters so that the emotional side doesn't wreak havoc on the legal side.
Right.
So
vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of the access to self-help resources, then when people need that education part, what are some of the ways the courts responded?
Well, courts across the country clearly recognize that there are more and more pro se litigants in family cases, and that the courts themselves need to be helping these litigants. One of the caveats as I start to talk about this is, of course, courts themselves are dealing with shrinking resources and a need to allocate those resources and make decisions about what they can and can't do. And that's increasingly a problem in this arena. Family cases have not always been of the highest priority, and so fighting for the resources to assure that self-represented litigants have access to the information they need is a battle. So most courts do have some form of self-help center where litigants can go and get general information about the process. Most courts have some system whereby lawyers will make themselves available on a limited basis and a pro bono basis to provide some educational advice or guidance to people. That shows up on hotlines or evenings where people can go and talk to a lawyer who is a volunteer. That, of course, is not retaining an attorney all the way through the process. It's just getting some limited advice about what the issues are and how the person should start to approach them. And then most courts are trying to figure out how better to engineer their forms and their websites so that they're more accessible to pro se litigants. Orange County, for example, has something that they're working on called Smart Forms. And those are forms, you've seen them in other contexts, where if you enter an answer in one question and then a contradictory answer in another question, the form will pop up and say, wait a minute, these two answers don't correspond with one another. Do you want to revisit it? Which one is right? So they're a little more interactive than most forms and a little less susceptible to error. So most courts are working on that end of things. Multilingual forms that are accessible to people who don't speak English. That's a huge issue across the United States. All of these things, of course, take resources, and all of them take a focus on these litigants as priority and important litigants in the system. And as I said at the beginning, that's a struggle.
Yeah, and it's sad, that government won't put more money into the family justice system, because when you look at the ripple effect of divorce on society, in the workplace, the impact on kids, health, like there's so many significant and costly outcomes.
Yeah, and where do you find the information? When you go through a divorce, it's not like I didn't have anyone telling me there were resources available. And I've always heard that judges really don't appreciate when you represent yourself because you seem a little lost. And then I've heard from people that when they're representing themselves, they feel, well, how can I go up against my soon-to-be ex's attorney? How can I possibly compete with that?
Yeah, to your first point, it is hard for judges because when pro se litigants come into the courtroom, self-represented litigants, they don't know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And the judge can't give them legal advice. So as a judge, you have to kind of try to steer them in a way that protects their rights and assures that there are not errors made, but by the same token doesn't offer them legal advice about what they should or shouldn't be doing. And then if you're in a courtroom where there is an attorney representing the other litigant, it gets even more imbalanced because that attorney, of course, knows the rules of the road and is navigating them adroitly. And there is the judge trying to help the self-represented litigant do the same. And it's very awkward. So judges are not delighted by the prospect of a hearing where one litigant is represented and the other isn't. In some respects, it's easier when both of them are not represented because then the judge, in a more even-handed way, can kind of say, okay, folks, this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it. So next time you show up in court, these are the documents you need to have and this is what you need to expect to do. So that sort of is an evener playing field from a judge's perspective, but and there are lots of education classes, by the way, for judges about how to do this well and how to do it fairly for both sides of the equation, but it's tough. And then from the litigant's perspective, of course it's daunting. You're looking across the courtroom and your soon-to-be ex-husband or wife has a divorce lawyer who is, standing up in court and making objections and questioning witnesses and presenting documents, and you're thinking, I have no idea what's going on here, and I have nobody who's representing my interests.
But you offered some really excellent advice at the beginning for self-represented litigants, and that was independent legal advice. Like if you can't afford a lawyer, the full trial, the full course, at least if you met with somebody for 2 or 3 hours, that would be huge because there's someone to guide you.
Or what about a hybrid where you have an attorney that you've hired that doesn't necessarily go with you to court, but you work through questions, he files documents, things like that?
And as I'm sure you know, Steve, the term for that is unbundled legal services. So you can hire an attorney a la carte to do just a portion of the case for you. In most states, that's not true across the United States unilaterally, but in most states, attorneys can offer services in that unbundled way. So if you've got concerns about your pension plan and the division of that, which, by the way, is something that divorce litigants should really be on the lookout for because it's complicated, you can go to an attorney and talk about that piece of it without necessarily hiring the attorney for the whole case. Or you can have an attorney sort of in your hip pocket but not take him or her to court. You're absolutely right about that.
Deborah, in Canada, divorce is a slower process, is it not?
No, I don't think so. What do you mean by slower process?
Well, I've heard that, let's say you need an emergency motion for status quo. And for our listeners, if you're going through a divorce, a lot of times once you've separated, if you're the wife and you're living in the home, you need to have money coming in. So you need things to be the same as they were until you get to court. So that's a motion that you apply for. Now, I've heard that in Canada, you can't always get those motions heard quickly. It might take a long time, where in the States, a lot of our court systems try to get a divorce done within 6 months, a year max.
You know what? I think it depends on the couple and it depends on the lawyer, because certainly there are emergency motions that are heard. There are. When people say it's slower, you have to live separate and apart for a year before you can get divorced.
I like that. I have no problem with that.
So that, I think, Becky, you've said so many really powerful things about the divorce process and how to help people. What's the takeaway? What would you love people to just think about?
What I would like people to think about is if you could start from scratch and design not just the system, but the laws as they relate to the process of divorce. I don't want to suggest that I'm asking people to reconsider, allocation of property or parenting time. I'm not looking at the substantive aspects. But if you could redesign the process itself, what would it look like? For example, Australia has a very different process than we have in the United States, where with non-contested divorces, it's almost administrative. Would that be a good thing, where there's very little court involvement if the parties agree? Or does that raise concerns about imbalance of power or domestic abuse or care for the children? It really is a question of what do we want the system to be doing in this arena? What, from our collective experience and knowledge in 2014, after as many decades of divorce around the country as we have now experienced, what have we learned? And how can we better serve the families who are going through this separation and divorce process? So my challenge is, if we didn't need to accept the status quo, what would we do differently to actually create a system that would nurture people through it to the extent possible and nurture the children through it to the extent possible, while still achieving the separation of legal rights and responsibilities that are associated with divorce?
You've given our listeners a lot to think about, even if they don't have the benefit of living in Denver and taking advantage of your services. I just want to draw them to the website. It's online.ials.du.edu, and IALS is IAALS. You've got a fabulous blog.
Thank you, Deborah.
So again, people can start educating themselves just by going to your website.
We would love to have people come to our website, and we would also be happy to have them reach out to us with suggestions for things that we ought to be looking at or learning about. We have no illusions that we know it all.
So if they want to get in touch with you, is there an email address?
Sure. Let's use Robert's email address, Deborah. He's our Director of Communications here at IALS. Robert.Thompson. Robert.P.Thompson at du.edu.
Okay, that's fabulous. Thank you. And what about if people want to take advantage of all your services? If we have any listeners that are in Denver and they want...
And can any other person throughout the country take advantage of any of this? Does the blog, can that be interactive for them? Would it be of value?
We would, for example, with you, Steve, we would love to have you do guest posts on our blog. We are very interested in bringing together opinions and thoughts from around the country, around the continent, if you will, Deborah, or world, about what are the issues, what are the possible solutions in these arenas. So we would invite you to offer guest blogs and participate in our blog, again, through contacting Robert. And as to your first question, the center on campus is called the Resource Center for Separating and Divorcing Families. It too can be accessed through the DU website. They have an intake process where the applicant families fill out some documents initially, and then they have a preliminary, very short phone interview to determine whether this is a family that would be appropriate for the center, and then it rolls from there. So I invite people to explore that.
So do you hear that, listeners? You need to go to the Denver University website. Again, it's online.ials.du.edu, because if you want to go through divorce in a more holistic way, minimizing the scars and the pain that can emerge from divorce, I think that, Becky, what you're talking about is definitely one of the ways that we need to start approaching the divorce process for families. So thank you so much for your time.
It has been my great pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Really educational. Thank you.
Deborah, I wish more cities and states had something like that. That's a great resource.
Isn't it? It's fabulous, because what I like is that it's really helping families divorce with dignity. Now, I know it's not easy, and we both know it's not easy. It changes the family dynamic in terms of when you've got kids, your outlook as couples now, and what that means in terms of your friendships. There's just so much. So at least when you've got a resource there that can help diffuse the anger, it's a resource for moving forward. Like, I love the fact that they provide you with support post-divorce. Like, people think that, going through divorce is this legal process and then the file closes. But like, now what? Like, you really do have to rebuild. So just having that information available and the support, and parenting post-divorce with kids, and how do you co-parent effectively? Like, so much of divorce is not just the here and now, but the what next.
Right. What I'm concerned about is people representing themselves without the resources.
I know. And that's why I think, when we talked about at least the unbundled resources, just going for independent legal advice, that is something that people really need to consider. I suggest a lot of my clients, because, they're afraid of the fees. More and more people are going through divorce on their own. But, I will say that people who do it on their own are the ones that tend to make more mistakes. And it's very expensive to fix those mistakes, if you can fix them at all. And oftentimes people will give away the most valuable things. Like, Becky talked about the pension. That's something that you really need to speak to the right experts to understand, certain of the benefits.
Right. Of course. How could you know? How could you know what is available to you? Or
and you don't know what you don't know until it's all over. Right? You don't know. And that's what I do as a divorce coach, is help people be forward thinking in terms of the questions that you need to ask.
Right.
There's so much. And when you're so emotional, you're not thinking with clarity.
Well, I've been talking with someone that's looking at representing himself through divorce, and I recommended he call you, because you know so much. You know where all of these resources are. So, my advice was, because he doesn't have a lot of money, right? So he can't really afford an attorney, but he can afford a divorce consultant like you that will help him through that. Is that a reasonable thing? to them?
Absolutely.
That's what you do, right?
That's exactly what I do. And I do that for a lot of people all across North America. So it would be my pleasure to help them. But, and what I love doing is helping to educate people. And, Becky talked a lot about the educational aspect of divorce. And there is so much that people need to consider. So I do educate my clients. I educate them about the legal process, the emotional side, children, parenting, your own personal life, in terms of moving forward and how do you manage it? And how do you rebuild your life? What are some of the considerations? People are so, and I know because I was there, you're full of fears. There's a lot of unknown fears, but there's what's realistic and what's not realistic. Mm-hmm. And so, those are things that you need to think about. What is it that you can do to make life better for yourself post-divorce? Because I truly believe that divorce is rich in opportunities to learn and grow from. And if you do it holistically and you do it thoughtfully, just like they offer through IAALS, through the Honoring Family Initiative, people will be so much better off.
I agree. So speaking of you, what's going on with the Smart Divorce?
Oh, it's fabulous. I'm working with so many people all across North America, guiding them through the process, working now with organizations and unions, and then the Smart Divorce Toolkit is just flying off the shelves. So, there's my book, The Smart Divorce, which is a bestseller and a top seller in the U.S., Smart Divorce Smart Guides, the CDs. I'm actually working on expanding to bring in information on abuse, substance abuse, domestic violence. There's so much that's going on. So please, listeners, don't hesitate to give me a call at 905-695-0270 or email me at Deborah, DEBORAH, at thesmartdivorce.com.
And that's the website, thesmartdivorce.com.
It is.
All right. Thank you for all you do. And another great show on Divorce Source Radio.
Thank you.
As always, I hope the program helped you. If you have a comment or question you'd like to ask us, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voicemail on our listener line at area code 248-686-2256. Or drop us an email with your question or comment to divorcesourceradio@gmail.com. New programs are available every week on divorcesourceradio.com, as well as iTunes, BlackBerry, Stitcher, and all over the web. If you'd like to be notified when new programs are available, you can follow us on Twitter. Our follow word is Divorce Source. Also, if you're not listening from our website, I invite you to stop by divorcesourceradio.com, where you'll find a complete program archive. If you're looking for a specific subject, simply type it into our search engine, and chances are you'll find what you're looking for. We also have other resources available at our website as well. And while you're on our website, click on the Facebook icon and join the growing Divorce Source Radio Facebook community. Thanks for listening. Until next time, make it a great week and stay healthy. I'm Steve Peck.